In the news tonight, challenges ahead for the local business sector. Prime Minister Mottley promises to continue to work to develop the tourism industry. Unstable weather conditions continue to affect Barbados. And in sports, Royals and Tallawahs to clash in the CPL final.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC NewsNight, starting now.
Very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom. Thank you so much for tuning in. In our top story tonight, significant challenges in the business sector lay ahead, but Barbados and the region have the talent to navigate the uncertainties. This was the general theme of the senior minister responsible for the productive sector, Kerry Simmons, as he delivered the feature address for BIBA's first in-person seminar since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Shane Jones has a report from the event held at the Savannah Beach Club Hotel and Spa.
It was BIBA's first luncheon seminar for 2022, and along with scores of businessmen and women, the association hosted a high-level delegation of Nigerian trade and commerce ministers and business leaders. During his welcome, new BIBA President Jamar Arthur Salman said his association has not been stagnant.
We are actively seeking feedback from members, whether it be nagging issues with the new KIPO online system, issues with the BRA, immigration or otherwise. We hear you, and we are actively communicating with members, representing members, lobbying on behalf of members, and just generally speaking, all stakeholders in Barbados generally. Because if it works better, we all get to do our jobs much more easy, more efficiently, and it's good for all of us.
As he sought to lay out a roadmap for where he believes the Barbados business sector is going, Senior Minister responsible for the productive sector, Kerry Simmons, said the issues of financial de-risking and correspondent banking are matters of significant concern. He's worried enough people in the region aren't speaking up.
There is the capacity to undermine commerce, undermine trade, undermine flows of finances across borders if we do not have the correspondent banking relationships and correspondent banking corridors and services that we rely on. The correspondent banking relationships are utilized not only by central banks, and not only by commercial houses, but also by ordinary citizens.
Minister Simmons said for the sector to survive future challenges, everyone needs to chip in. He stressed he has confidence in the members of the business community.
There's simply too much talent in the global business sector in Barbados for us not to recognize that we have reach and we have influence. Influence that stretches from right here in Bridgetown all the way to the corridors of financial influence and financial power in the United States, all the way to the corridors of financial influence and financial power in Canada and in the United Kingdom. And we have to be prepared in an organized way to let our voices be heard on some of these existential threats.
Mr. Simmons said an important development on the horizon is the apparent inclination by the U.S. Treasury to work with Barbados to designate the correspondent banking services as indispensable.
It is important because the influence of the U.S. Treasury, especially if we can get this legislated, will enable other jurisdictions who tend to follow suit to understand the vital role that correspondent banking relationships play, and that this cannot be a matter that is trifled with, because effectively, as I just outlined to you, you are really toying with people's livelihoods.
The luncheon seminar was held in collaboration with the BIDC. Shane Jones, CBC News.
Thanks, Shane. Barbados remains heavily reliant on the tourism industry for its economic prospects, and as such, it will continue work to develop the sector. This from Prime Minister Mia Amor Mottley as she was addressing the St. James Speaks Forum at the Darrell Jordan Secondary School last night. One resident who contributed said he heard rumors of plans to get rid of the existing properties along the seaside stretch in Whole Town to make way for tourism development and at the same time kill the Whole Town Festival, and asked the Prime Minister to respond. Well, Ms. Mottley first assured the resident nothing would threaten the existence of the annual festival, and while she did not confirm or deny plans to build out the area, she said the island's tourism product is desperately in need of a revival.
All this government has done is that we have put out an advertisement for both here, and we did it elsewhere in Oistins, but we said we're doing one at a time now. And to move what is civic facilities that have a limited number of jobs that are being provided for the police, for the librarians, for the persons who work in that civic center. If we move it across off of the beach, they still have the jobs, do they?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. These services are still immediately available to anybody walking on the coast?
Yeah.
Okay. And that there is nothing in Barbados called a private beach?
The Prime Minister says if the decision is made, the benefits will be significant.
At the end of the day, if we can put a facility now on that same spot while moving the civic center that preserves the number of jobs that we have, and we can put a facility on that spot that can give us opportunity for hundreds of jobs, not to mention then the expanded work for the truckmen who got to deliver all the foods and the goods, not to mention the expanded sales for all the merchants who got to sell, not to mention the NCC approved licensed vendors who will now have a different category of persons out there to be able to sell to.
The Prime Minister also pointed out the flooding experienced in Old Town yesterday could have been far worse had the government not undertaken work through a water resource management and food resilience project. She says she was kept abreast of developments from the head of the Barbados Meteorological Services, who monitored the situation with up-to-date technology.
We now have water level radars, and he sent me the graphs this afternoon. And he said that the water in the Old Town Canal really only rose by 2 feet, which is unusual because it would have risen by far, far more had we not done the work up before. And then the other work that USAID had been helping us with here in Old Town, as you saw, with the ability to be able to take some of the water. But with the level of water that we had this afternoon, on top of, we had 4 inches in Old Town of water. That's crazy. That's crazy within the time frame that it came. And we also had in St. Lucie 30 millimeters in 30 minutes.
Several residents also raised concerns about the state of the roads right across the parish. The Prime Minister assured them the rehabilitation will be done, but only after some badly needed infrastructural work is carried out.
We could have done Highway 1 earlier in this government, but we needed to make sure that when we were doing Highway 1, that we were putting down the water pipes and also the conduits ultimately for the pulling of electrical cables, etc. We have to do the same with Highway 7. And we have the other additional issue of natural gas pipelines too, as Kerry is reminding me. So while Sandia could perhaps give an instruction to go to Prior Park and repave the roads straight away, it would be putting good money that would be literally dug up within 6 months to a year because of the problems with the water.
Well, the skies over Bridgetown and by extension the CBC darkened around 5 this evening as the weather deteriorated, dumped heavy showers on the area and bombarded it with thunder and lightning. The inclement weather caused forced delays as rush hour traffic backed up on the ABC highway. The Met Office has issued a flash flood warning for the entire island. It says unstable conditions due to the presence of a low-level trough system is affecting the island, and we'll have more a bit later on. Well, now from the unstable conditions here in Barbados to the carnage of Hurricane Ian. The monster Category 4 storm made landfall on Florida's southwestern coast yesterday afternoon. This report gives a sense of some of the damage done.
Hurricane Ian slamming Florida's Gulf Coast with near Category 5 strength, causing life-threatening flooding.
Overwhelmingly, it's been that surge that has been the biggest issue, and the flooding.
The monster storm making landfall with winds of 150 miles per hour.
I've been here since the mid-'70s. This is absolutely by far the worst storm I have ever seen. I can tell you, I'm looking at the businesses downtown that are all flooded, windows blown out.
Even before the worst of the storm hit, people in Fort Myers already seeing mass flooding.
The storm surge is very significant. We're actually seeing cars and boats float down the street.
Hurricane-force winds bringing down power lines. Ahead of the storm, long lines on interstates as residents scramble to evacuate, some choosing to stay behind and ride it out.
Well, we're 10.5 feet above sea level right now, and the water is coming into our house right now.
Governor Ron DeSantis submitting a request for a major disaster declaration for all 67 counties, which allows the federal government to send funds for cleanup.
Well, back here in Barbados, we're hearing that by year-end, property owners who do not maintain their lots could be facing much stiffer penalties. This from Attorney General Dale Marshall, who says new legislation is coming to deal with the perennial problem. He also acknowledged that government is one of the biggest offenders in this practice.
In our health services regulations going back into the 1950s, there is a set of penal provisions which will, basically criminalize an individual who maintains on land or who maintains his land in such a way as to be a harborage, that's the old word they use, harborage of vermin, mosquitoes, rats, and so on. It's been there for a long time. But the fine is a very small fine, and it simply is not practical. So we're trying to transform that entire legislative framework to modernize it so as to provide a greater incentive or perhaps a greater penalty for those individuals who are keeping their lots untidy.
Well, coming up, fire leaves one man homeless. 30 new COVID-19 cases were recorded yesterday from the 309 tests conducted. Of the positive cases, 3 people are under the age of 18 and 27 are 18 years and older. There were 28 people in isolation facilities, while 199 were in home isolation. The labs conducted 765,378 tests since February 2020 and recorded 102,546 COVID-19 cases, comprising 46,385 males and 56,161 females. Now, under the National Vaccination Program for COVID-19, the total number of fully vaccinated people is 154,657, or about 57.1% of the total population, which equates to about 67.7% of the eligible population. And the daily publication of the COVID-19 statistics dashboard and update will end tomorrow. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says it will be replaced by a twice-monthly publication of the COVID-19 statistics. The ministry is encouraging members of the public to continue to exercise personal responsibility to protect themselves and others from COVID-19 in light of the further relaxation of the protocols. A fire at St. Elizabeth Village in St. Joseph has gutted the home of Anthony Brace. It happened around 5 as heavy rains pounded the area. Brace, who is in his 70s, was uninjured. He lost everything in the fire. It is unknown at this time what caused the blaze. Brace is expected to spend the night with family. The interveners team of Tricia Watson and David Simpson's request to defer cross-examination of the Barbados Light and Power Company's witnesses on depreciation on the basis they were not served with a copy of the power company's application for approval of depreciation rate and depreciation policy has been rejected. Chairman Dr. Donnelly Carrington addressed the request at the start of this morning's Day 7 of the Fair Trading Commission's hearing into the rate increase.
The Commission does not agree with the Watson-Simpson's team's interpretation. Depreciation was listed as one of the issues for determination in these proceedings on the issues list. Therefore, the issue cannot be a surprise to any intervener. Notwithstanding that the interveners were served with all the relevant evidence for determination of depreciation rates for generation plant upon which the Barbados Light and Power Company relies in these proceedings, the Commission will exercise its discretion to defer cross-examination to tomorrow, since Mr. Huck will be available until tomorrow.
During his lively cross-examination in the evening session, the power company's Director of Finance, Ricardo Jennings, was grilled by the acting public counsel, Sharon Dean, on the company's handling of the self-insurance fund.
Your position in respect to taking out US $50 million from the self-insurance fund in 2016, do you believe there's a good reason for doing this?
So the managing director would have spoken, I think, extensively to the logic behind doing this.
Sir, Mr. Jennings, your post again, what's your post again, sir?
I'm Director of Finance.
So I'm going to redirect the question again, then. I'm believing you could give us an answer?
I thought I just did.
Okay, I'm going to ask again. So then, is it accurate to say that you believe there's a justifiable and a good reason then for taking out the US $50 million from the self-insurance fund in 2016?
I've heard the testimony as given by the managing director. He spoke to the situation that led up to it. He spoke to the study that was completed. He spoke to the manner in which it was done. Yes.
During today's hearing, some of the proposed price increases of certain products and services were revealed, like a damaged 1 pH meter moving from $50 to $260. The acting public counsel wanted answers.
Is it possible to justify such increases in the tariffs for the above services when, by your own admission, inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index only increased by over 38% since 2010?
Yes, and I have a colleague who comes after me who deals with cost of service and with tariff design, and I believe that this is more about, these are typically non-standard charges. They're not typical or standard charges, and I think this is just to realign with the actual cost of these proposed services. They're not expected to be, everyday charges that everyone pays or deals with. And the question you asked about justifying it, my colleague who deals with cost of service can certainly help understand the justification for it.
On this World Heart Day, a leading consultant is unveiling a plan to provide better and more holistic care for the growing number of people living with heart disease in Barbados. Consultant internist at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Dr. Kenneth Connell, says the healthcare system needs to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic with a new structure catering to the most vulnerable in society. He says there needs to be a leveling of the playing field in health care, where fewer patients with heart problems are left to fend for themselves. The Deputy Dean in the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the UWI Cave Hill outlines his concept for a more nimble healthcare system.
The health system has to incorporate things like technology. We're having this conversation remotely, but the use of technology and telemedicine, telehealth. Health support systems have to be emerged that are more fit for purpose. For instance, the home delivery system of medication needs to be expanded to include polyclinics and even private care. I would like to see a national system that allows for patients to kind of, like you will book a taxi, book delivery of your medication and collection from a pharmacy that's more kind of strategic.
Dr. Connell says responding to heart disease now hinges on finding technology best practices in health care.
The innovations in the health system electronic medical records for tracking patients, electronic platforms so that patients can send their health data using their smartphones or even their smartwatches to the polyclinic or the hospital. These are technologies we use in a much smaller scale during COVID. We now need to build on it so that it becomes a COVID legacy that decreases heart disease.
A move is on to heighten consumer awareness and shift behavior regarding food wastage. It calls for public and private entities from across the agri-food system to act now to measure and reduce food loss and waste and assist with the shifting of consumer behavior. The initiative comes as the 3rd International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste is observed today, September 29th. The Food and Agricultural Organization, in its latest report on the state of food security and nutrition in the world, revealed the number of people affected by hunger rose to as many as 828 million in 2021, an increase of about 46 million since 2020 and 150 million since 2019. Sub-Regional Director for the Caribbean, Dr. Renata Clark, reminds Barbadians if food is continually wasted, it impacts production.
If we continue to waste food, it means that that production needs to increase even further, even beyond that. And the food that's lost, it's not only a question of the lost food, which in itself is a tragedy. There are layers of waste around that, all of the inputs that are used to produce food, all of the energy that goes into producing those inputs, the water, the land space.
Dr. Clark identified fish silage as one of the areas she's excited about that can have direct relevance to food loss and wastage. Now, ahead of the upcoming 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference, the Food is Never Waste Coalition developed a global food loss and waste pledge calling on governments, businesses and institutions to make voluntary commitments in order to accelerate progress toward meeting the Sustainable Development Goal target.
Tonight's business report is brought to you by Ansa Merchant Bank. Our greatest asset is you.
A regional finance consultant is calling for caution in dealing with cryptocurrencies. Colin Daniel was speaking during a Guyana-Barbados webinar on financial matters. He told the session investments in equities and real estate were a safer option.
Generally, most of the cryptos in the marketplace are not asset-backed. If you have an asset-backed crypto token, for example, that is backed by something like real estate or backed by an underlying portfolio of equities and bonds and whatnot, it is an effective tool.
In a wide-ranging address, the finance consultant gave advice on pension planning.
Think about what your long-term objectives are in terms of what lifestyle do you want when you are retired. And this goes to the point that we made earlier in terms of maintaining your plan and also making your money work for you. What is your long-term objective in terms of if you're 20, 24-year-old, where do you see yourself at 40? Where do you see yourself at 60? And where do you see yourself at end of life?
Well, shade houses will soon be set up in Barbados. Word of this from Minister of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security Indar Weir as he addressed the annual general meeting of the St. Lucie branch of the Barbados Labour Party. He told the gathering an exchange program in shade houses has been started between Guyana and Barbados. It is part of government's plans to reduce the food import bill by 2025.
We sat down to Guyana. I think there were about 10 or 11 persons to train to set up these shade houses. And we are also going to do additional training. And we're doing a program with Guyana as well for training young people in agriculture, where we're going to have an exchange program with them. They have a good agriculture school, and shade houses and greenhouses is one of the things that we're looking at to train people with.
Let's head back over to the sports studio now for the second half in sports. Mark.
Volleyball, as promised, Burger King, Clapham Toners and Cormier men maintained outside hopes of winning the Goddard Enterprises Limited senior volleyball titles when round 2 of the league continued at the Wilde Gym. On the women's side, Toners got the better of development volleyball in motion, 22-25, 26-24, 25-8, 25-13. Then Club United eased past Pan American Insurance Warrants in straight sets. On the men's side, Cormier defeated Stars Volleyball Club in 5 sets. CBC's Damien Best reports.
Ladies action first up. Club United in black taking on Warrens. The club looked really comfortable in this matchup. The service game of Raquel Reisman Mendez proving difficult, 16-13 at this stage in the first set. The second time around, Warrens deal with the high looping serve and Raquel not on her toes, drops into space. In fact, Warrens rattle off a few more points before the club put the brakes on the comeback to take the first set, 25-20. Nicole Puckrin with the block. Second set business. Puckrin with the serve now. Warrens make a mess of it, and that's 21-12 at this stage. The club going on to close out the matchup in 3 straight then. 25-20, 25-14, 25-16. Men's second round competition, Cormier in blue and yellow versus Stars Volleyball Club. Middle blocker targeted, no recovery, point to the Stars. Now this was a real ding-dong battle. Cormier with some heavy artillery. Sean Simpson throws down the hammer, that's a kill, 16-9. Stars actually opened their account by edging Cormier in the first set. Any freeness is appreciated, 25-23 to the men in black. Cormier leveled in the second set, 25-15. Now in the third, strike down the line, Cormier on a roll. But the Stars really acquitted themselves well in this match. Back set, off the block and out of play. They would indeed take the lead 2-1, spiked high and long, 25-20 to the Stars. In the fourth we go. Cormier with an early blemish, overset and rightfully punished. The formula reworked and Simpson will lead by example. Back set and slice through the block for another kill. It wasn't all offense helping their cause. That's an error, lacking coordinates. Cormier eventually prevailing in the fourth, 25-21, an ace, precision stuff. The all-important fifth set, switch of ends, race to 15, one-on-one at the net, Cormier getting it done. More of the good stuff. Hang time was nice and a swing of the right arm deadly. How would Stars answer? Forcefully, partially blocked, but it's good enough for the point. In the end though, it will be Cormier doing just enough to get their second round off to a winning start, sealing the fifth, 15-12, and the match 3-2.
Well, that's our news for tonight. Thank you very much for tuning in. Good night.
Thanks for visiting us. To get more stories like this one, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.